Welcome to the Photo Banter podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gagne, and on today's podcast, I speak with photographer Chona Kasinger. Chona has worked with clients such as the New York Times, Rolling Stone, GQ, and Bloomberg Business Week, to name a few. In this interview, I speak to Chona about how she discovered photography, some of her early days photographing live music in the Seattle area, as well as a recent cover shoot for Bloomberg Business Week. Chona is someone whose work I discovered on Instagram and really enjoy her approach to both portrait and food photography, so I was really excited to get a chance to speak with her about her work, so I hope you enjoy, and thanks so much for listening. All right, well, Chona Kasinger, welcome to the podcast. Really excited to have you on here. Discovered your work on Instagram, like I think just like a week or two ago, and you've been up to some cool stuff. But I guess like I've been asking everybody, like, crazy year. How's life been for you? It looks like you've still been shooting. You've been doing some interesting assignments, but I guess how's the last 8 months been for you? I guess.
It's been all over the map. Yeah, with Seattle kind of being the ground zero of things way back in about like February, March.
Mm-hmm.
Things got really, really hectic. And then, after the initial onset, it was pretty sleepy in my camp for a few months, really. And things started kind of gradually trickling back in, and now with the election just around the corner, things are getting a lot busier. So
That's good. So I saw you shot a cover for Bloomberg. It was like a special report issue on the coronavirus. What was kind of that assignment all about, and what was kind of your experience kind of working with Bloomberg for that, I guess?
yeah, I listened to I was on a long episode with Jane and Sasha, and I think it was Jesse as well.
Yep.
And Jane is amazing to work with, but I actually reached out to her in the pre-COVID era. I'm just a serial pitcher. I love to pitch. I love to, kind of generate ideas and just like see who'll bite. And I reached out to her just kind of knowing what the landscape here was like. I live in Capitol Hill, which is the epicenter of kind of where a lot of the action's happening in town.
Yep.
So I reached out to her, and she kind of let me know what they were working on. And yeah, I actually photographed that cover from my brother's office, which
really?
was completely empty at the point. It was eerie. It was a time. It continues to be a time.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really interesting to hear with like pitching and stuff. Like how do you kind of approach it, and like maybe any kind of tips you have for people with pitching? Because I did read somewhere, I think you ended up photographing, I think like a yo-yo tournament or something, and Wired ended up picking it up or something. So I guess what's kind of your experience with like pitching to magazines, I guess?
Yeah, I just have a soft spot for the offbeat. And anything I cook up, or I always keep tabs of like calendars. When I was starting out, I did a lot of work with like alternative weeklies. Seattle Weekly was one of them. So they just kind of thrived on getting like the weird kind of stuff with lots of people. You know, they just like to get clicks. And so I would just think, what is the craziest stuff? Like, where are the, weirdos gonna be, and what can I do? uh so just kind of going off of that, and living in the city too, there's no shortage of things happening here. Any kind of niche you can imagine, you'll find it in Seattle.
And I guess when you're like pitching an idea, are you generally like writing up something, and do you kind of already have photos you've taken already every time, or is it sometimes you're just pitching an idea with stuff you haven't shot yet, I guess?
Typically I'll reach out in advance, and see if there's any interest, and I kind of use that as a litmus test.
Mhm.
It's not always the case that like if no one gets back, it's not worth being there for, but generally I'll try to, if there is like a little bit of lead time, try to see if anyone's interested, and then if not, and I feel passionately about it, I'll just go for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just keep my ear to the ground mostly.
Yeah, I found I've had some luck during the last 8 months with COVID, because like I've been pitching some stuff, and I had one actually worked out with the AARP, and then like some stuff I'd shot before that people ended up licensing. Because I think now more than ever, it's a weird time, especially with like portraiture. I think if you, at least in my experience in the last 8 months, it seems like magazines are like looking for content and ways where they can kind of navigate around not having to like set up shoots if they don't have to risk like, health and safety, I guess, a little bit.
For sure. Did you work with Michael?
No, I do know Michael. I didn't work with him. It was Jane Clark over at ARP.
Awesome. Yeah, they've been a really great client to work with, because I feel like they do kind of recognize like the more offbeat stuff, and they're all about it. Yeah, I just shot a thing for Michael for AARP. It was about Twin Peaks 30th anniversary,
Oh, wow.
which is like correlate, like it's just so Gen X. And I'm a huge fan, so there's kind of another instance of like trying to pursue like the things that I love. And it's stuff that I would probably go to anyway. Like I was actually supposed to photograph this it's going to happen at Graceland. There's a big 30th anniversary event happening with a lot of the cast, and then of course that got canceled, so it kind of morphed into something else. But yeah, being in the Pacific Northwest.
Wait, so they were going to do, so Twin Peaks was going to go to Graceland, the cast? Is that what you meant?
A lot of the cast, yeah. It's kind of like a weird random thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't it be in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, that's what I thought. That is pretty funny.
Yeah, are you a David Lynch fan?
I mean, I have to be honest, I haven't watched Twin Peaks. I mean, I've seen like bits and pieces of it, but like I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I'm getting worse and worse. Like my attention span for anything it's terrible, and it's something like I'm trying to work at. And it's like I think it's honestly due to from like cell phone. It's like the worst. Like I can't. It's hard to like sit down and just watch like a show or like a movie anymore. I have to like really like I don't know. It's a bad habit I'm trying to work on, but I definitely do need to watch Twin Peaks for sure.
Yeah, a lot of it's pretty disjointed too, and it's like it can be hard to follow, especially as this show like progresses into season 2, and then you get into the return, and it's just like all hell breaks loose. So it's a different show.
No, I do love the intro song. Like the intro song is like the best ever. I love it. It's so good. Um, but I guess to go back, I was just kind of curious, like where'd you grow up and like how did you kind of get into photography initially?
Yeah. I was born in the Philippines, in the suburbs of Manila, and my family moved to the suburbs of Seattle when I was about 10, about fourth grade. So that was an interesting time to kind of transition from, there to here.
Yeah.
But yeah, how did I get into photography? A friend of mine had like an amazing camera in high school, and she would take pictures of all of us, and I just thought like the quality was so amazing. I think it was like a Nikon D whatever was before the D50.
Yep.
The D50 was my first camera. I remember getting that for Christmas. That was kind of the beginning of it. I photographed a lot of live music at that time in my life, because I was playing a lot of music. I took like guitar lessons in high school, and I was in bands, and kind of slowly that morphed into taking my camera along to shows. And then I kind of naturally hit the barrier where like you would need like a access, like a press pass to go to the shows. And then I had like one really bad experience at the Showbox, which is a venue here in downtown Seattle. And I just kind of told myself like, well, screw that, I'll get a photo pass next time and show them who's who. Yeah, so from there I kind of just shot for the local blogs. This would have been like when I was in college, 2008 or so. And yeah, it just kind of from there it's
what were like some of your favorite bands in high school, like looking back, like because you said you're like super into music, what do you kind of remember about the music you were listening to back then?
Well,
I guess
yeah, we had really, I mean, we still have pretty good bands, but yeah, there's definitely a scene back then. I went to school in Tacoma. I went to the UW Tacoma, and there was like a really, really amazing scene in Tacoma of all places. Great bands like the Drug Purse and Makeup Monsters, and a band called the Nightgowns. But I would just kind of like go to their shows. There are a lot of house shows. I still just have the fondest memories of house shows, which seems like a distant memory now, right? But I loved like all the sub pop bands. I used to do like postering for Barstool Records. At my core, I was just a music fan, and it still influences what I do today, although it's like really not what I photograph at all these days. I carry that with me for sure. But I love like the Thermals. I remember going to their shows and like going to school the next day and just feeling so deaf. And the Walkmen, and yeah, so many great bands.
Yeah, music photography like seems like a really hard thing to do nowadays because like most venues, if you can even get a pass, most bands they only let you shoot like the first 2 songs or something like that, and you're just kind of stuck in the front. So it seems like being a music photographer nowadays is like it's a tough road unless you're like working for the band or something like that, getting access. But then again, I mean, I know I read you ended up interning at Rolling Stone, I think, in college or something, and like when you look at, I don't know if you've been following Sasha Lekka's work, people listening, and that guy is like I feel like that dude's like the best music photographer like working right now. Like his show stuff is insane.
Yeah, he's amazing. When I interned there, I think that his little cubicle was next to mine, and I just would always see his longboard. But I don't think I ever spoke to him because I was on the online side of things. So I
Yeah.
worked with John Guerra at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, his were amazing.
Yeah. What so did you end up, I know you mentioned you went to school in Tacoma. Did you end up studying photography, or what were you kind of going to school for when you were up there?
Yeah, I worked at a camera store for a very short time, maybe my freshman year of college. I worked at Kids Camera.
Nice.
It was it was a humbling experience. I think that was my last like job where I
Retail,
think,
retail is a tough job. I've worked plenty of
oh
retail. It's tough.
yeah, they are very aggressive with getting us to sell like insurance with every single thing. And
Oh, really?
yeah, but I can't really say I learned that much working there. Just mostly get like people's grandmas coming in asking how many megapixels a camera had, and no joke.
Yeah.
But I studied basically the equivalent of it was arts, media, and culture, and self and society. So there was a heavy focus for me on like film studies classes and film history, and I think that informed like in a really big way how I shoot today. And I discovered a lot of amazing directors, and yeah.
Because like at that point, like, what did you think you were gonna do? Like, did you already kind of envision like being a working photographer and doing magazine stuff, or like when you're in school studying all that? Like, did you kind of even have a goal in mind at that point?
Yeah, I was interning and kind of just like shooting things for no money, and really going between, like, I was living in Federal Way throughout college and kind of going to school and then driving up to Seattle for shows. Um, but I guess in a way, I kind of thought that photography was like my path. I just, shot all the shows I could shoot. I was like connecting with all the people I could connect with at that point, and yeah, their path I was like thinking about. I think like when I started out, I was considering psychology. But if anything, I think that going to school probably learned, like, I learned how to write a good email.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's like kind of, that's a very important skill to have, and to know how to communicate with people, and
Yeah,
how to be
definitely.
a person.
The email and like email subject lines, it's like a craft in itself. Like, I don't know what your approach is. I literally like at this point, I've like worded it down to like 1 sentence, maybe 2 at the tops, and that's like what I do when like emailing editors and stuff. Because I know like most people they don't read shit. Like they're just gonna like, if they do open it, they don't want to read a paragraph. But I guess like what's your approach, I guess, when reaching out to new clients and stuff like that?
It is an art, right? And I mean, there's no one way either.
Mhm.
I sent a lot of cold emails. I feel like I've kind of haven't done as much of that past couple years, but when I was starting out, there was a lot of that, and I never expect to get a response. And
Yeah.
I think, that's where a lot of people get really frustrated and just really kind of bummed out. Like they send a bajillion emails and like nobody gets back, or maybe like 2 people get back, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the game,
It definitely
and
works. It definitely works. Anybody listening, you send out 100. If you get one, it works, and it's just like
that is a victory.
for real, it works. I've definitely got assignments like you said, like early on. It's just like you keep knocking away at it. Someone will give you a chance if your work's decent enough.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I just, it's always kind of walking the line of like, is this annoying? Is this, but you know, I think that there's like a certain success rate where if you notice something is working, like it will probably work with other people.
Yep.
Not always, but I think it's important to like maybe communicate with folks and like colleagues, like other photographers, and see what techniques have worked for them.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really great resources online and a lot of communities, like, Women Photograph, obviously. We have a great little
Yeah.
network, and Diversify Photo is amazing, and Authority Collective. And a few months ago, I did some portfolio reviews through Art of Freelance.
Okay.
And that was really, really helpful. And just that kind of network of like kind of seeing how other photographers are conducting their businesses, because at the end of the day, like, you can be an amazing photographer, but if you don't know how to get your work out there, it's really tough.
Yeah, it's like any way possible. I did a portfolio review with the SPD, which is like Society of Publishers and Design. They had one
Yeah.
last week, and it was interesting. It was just kind of I met with I met with like 54 people, so it was like
Oh
20
my goodness.
20. It was intense. It was like 20 minutes, like speed dating for photo stuff, but it actually was good to get feedback from other people, and then I actually talked to some other photographers that did it, and it's like because I don't know about you, like sometimes it's hard to edit your own work because it is good sometimes to get input from other people, I think,
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I will say, I think maybe one positive thing about like all of this time and kind of solitude for all of us, editors, photographers, art directors,
Yeah.
all the creatives, is that I feel like people have been so generous with their time and so, willing to share information that like was so fiercely guarded before.
Hmm.
Like why? Like just let people know how it is. Like
Yeah.
if you know, and if you don't, then you just kind of sometimes look like a clown. But
Yeah.
we're all learning as we go.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess like when you got out of college, what was kind of your next step into like the photo world? Did you end up just go straight to shooting, or what was kind of your first step into the biz, I guess?
Yeah. I did try to go a more conventional route when I first graduated. I was trying to like look at studios. I applied for lots of jobs.
Hmm.
I didn't get any of them. Um, I recall like there were a couple of photographers, like I would just, reach out to everybody who I thought was kind of doing work that aligned with what I hope to do down the
Hmm.
line. And yeah, very little response there. So I kind of just like forged away on my own thing. And there is no one correct way to pursue like this line of work.
No.
And it's like we're all kind of just pioneers in a weird way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just like kept shooting everything I could shoot. Photographing live music, I continued to do that, but that kind of evolved into photographing things behind the scene. So that became a lot of like 5-minute sessions with bands backstage,
Hmm.
like a music festival. And over time that kind of morphed into just like more portraits, which I love to do. I still love to do it. And yeah, now I photograph people from all walks of life. So
Yeah, your work's interesting because if you go on your website, yeah, like it looks like a lot of work you do is portraiture, but then you also kind of mix in you're super into like baking and food, and then you'll have like landscapes, which is like I think a really hard thing to do, like to mix all those things together. But somehow, it kind of with you, it kind of works because you can tell you're really interested in those things. But like, how do you kind of approach like editing your work, being that you shoot so many different types of things, I guess.
yeah, for sure. And I think that's a direct result of being an editorial photographer. Like on a weekly basis, you're pulled in so many directions, and it is important to be, I think, like diverse and able to shoot a lot of different things. But I also understand that like a lot of a lot of photo editors just will not devote the time to figure out what your deal is. Like they want it to be spoon fed. They want like an overview and they want like all the things and they want
Mm-hmm.
it to be digestible and like easy and they know what your mission statement is.
Yep.
So, I don't know if like I'm the only editorial photographer out there that struggles with like kind of condensing everything in a way that kind of makes sense. But yeah, you're right. Like I do love kind of photographing everything and I am in the process of like creating, like kind of overhauling my site and
Yep.
having a more cohesive thing. Like I'm not gonna stop shooting food and people. Like it's interesting because I feel like the thing I get reached out for the most is portraiture.
Yep.
But on the commercial end, the thing I get reached out to the most for is food.
Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, reconciling those two things, like whether that's maybe having like more portraits of chefs and like them in the process of making their food, um like all that kind of stuff is stuff kind of beginning to consider and digest. So
Yeah, no, I think for me, like, it just makes sense, like when it comes from like a sincere place. Like when I look at your work, it's like you can tell you enjoy shooting. Like I think when you go on your Instagram, you're super into like baking and like you have some like really cool cookies that look amazing. And it's like,
thanks.
because like sometimes you go on people's websites and you can tell they're just trying to throw stuff up there to hopefully get hired, and you can it just doesn't come from like they're not into it the way you are, and I think that's what comes across, and it makes sense that you can shoot all these different things, but you can tell you have a genuine interest in them, I guess.
Yeah, I think that every photographer's worst nightmare is probably being told that like their work looks like 10 different photographers shot it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my hope is that that's not the vibe people get when they look at my work. But I think a lot of photographers, especially when they're starting out, kind of struggle with finding that voice and telling different stories.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, there's just a lot of personal kind of just a lot of finesse and a lot of a photographer's touch that goes in there because I think in a way every picture a photographer takes is kind of a self-portrait.
Yeah, for sure. And like you kind of touched on it, like finding your voice and like style. Is that something you spend a lot of time thinking about? And has it kind of this evolved the longer you kind of keep shooting? And like, I guess what's your kind of approach these days, you think?
I think that when people, and me too, I think that when a photographer begins to think too much about what their style is or what it's going to be, it completely gets muddled.
Yep.
Like, I think that it's important. There's a lot of power in just like going out and like doing it the way you're going to do it. And like, of course, when you're, shooting on assignment for like the Times or the Post or whatever, they'll give you direction, but I think it's important to also, never lose sight like your vision and you never want to be in a position where you're taking a photo that's not your own. And I think that's probably more of an issue in the commercial realm than it is in the editorial realm,
Yeah.
because there's obviously a lot more at stake. And I mean, when I say a lot more at stake, money.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're paying you to get a very specific thing, and they're throwing a lot of money at you, so it's easy to kind of get pulled in a way that like maybe you wouldn't shoot it normally. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because at the end of the day, like with editorial, like for the most part, you're not gonna get paid a ton of money usually. So it's like for me, I just want to be happy and make a picture I'm proud of at the end of the day. And that's kind of the goal for me. And have you ever run in a situation? I've had it like for the most part, editors when they hire you because they look at your work and they know what you do. But like
mhm.
sometimes you can almost get too much direction. And then I almost feel like I'm like shooting a photo that I wouldn't generally shoot like normally. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, you ever feel like you get too much direction from editors sometimes a little bit?
I think so, but I think that probably the biggest problem is like not editing yourself enough and like
Mhm.
sending in 50 photos that like are that you think are all like workable and could like potentially be in print, but then there's only really like three of them that you feel like you love, but
Yeah.
then you send them all in and then they always go with the one that you don't love. Like it happens time and time again. So it's really important to just like be
Yeah.
concise with your edit. And I know that's hard. I struggle with it like still. So
Yeah, because it's like, yo, because you wanna, like, please the client and, like, over deliver. Yeah, but yeah, it's like this, like, balance of, like, you still wanna put your artistic touch on whatever you're gonna submit, I guess. Wow.
Absolutely. And you know, it can be a struggle when you're shooting someone and you have like 5 minutes and you're shooting a CEO and you're in a hallway and you have like, you know, two.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. And so I guess like when you kind of were starting to shoot your first editorial assignments and stuff, like who are some of the first clients you're working for, and like how are you kind of initially kind of getting your work out there, like marketing yourself? What kind of worked for you in the early days, I guess?
Oh man, my first clients, it's kind of crazy to say, like Rolling Stone was one of my first clients.
Damn.
One of my first big assignments that I like, you know, got money for and it blew my mind was the EMP, which is a museum here in Seattle. It's now called something else, the Museum of Pop Culture.
Hmm.
Um, but I photographed a bunch of bands for what was it? Their Battle of the Bands, like their underage Battle of the Bands, sound off, and that ended up being a huge spread in the Seattle Times. And just these little things, I think over the years that gradually kind of led to getting noticed by editors. Like
Hmm.
I think the way my was through Flickr. And
Yeah.
Flickr was a huge like thing for me back
Wow.
in the day. I still miss it in a
Wow.
way.
Oh, so you were going pretty hard on Flickr. You're using it a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Tumblr, but Flickr especially. I loved it.
Yeah, and yeah, it was an amazing thing. I don't, yeah, I didn't use it. But I know some other photographers that it was like had its own little kind of community, like Tumblr and like Flickr. These like
Hmm.
sites back then, they kind of had their own little ecosystem. That's really cool.
Yeah. You know, I started out like most photographers kind of shooting locally for the papers here,
Hmm.
Seattle Weekly, did some work for The Stranger. And then, I mean, I don't even know, it's been like 10 years. This stuff just happens so fast, right? Yeah, portraits.
So
And then
were you interning at Rolling Stone while you're in college, or you like moved to New York with their offices after? Like when did you kind of work with them, I guess?
I 2010.
Okay.
So I would have been like a junior in college. And yeah, so yeah, lots of music in my life at that point. And yeah, music is the foundation of all that. But yeah, from that point on, like it's it's all up from there, right? I mean, it's like it was a huge bump for me starting out because if you could just say, you know, here's some work in Rolling Stone, like
Yeah.
a lot of people are immediately like their ears are perked up, like they'll listen.
Yep.
So that worked out for me.
Yeah, like how was that kind of experience interning from them? Like what kind of stuff were you doing? And like I guess what do you kind of take away from getting to work for like a publication that's been around for so long like that?
Yeah, it was a trip going into Midtown every day, you know, taking the subway, being up in there. It was really eye-opening. I went in not really having much experience with like Photoshop or anything like that, but I stock photo kind of agencies they worked with, Getty, just you know, sourcing images for their site. And yeah, my he's like my mentor, John Guerra. He was amazing, and I learned a lot from him in terms of like kind of how this stuff CMS works. And you know, he left as people do; they move on, and he went to BuzzFeed. And you know, in the editorial world, when people move around, if they like you enough, they kind of bring you with them. So that led to work with BuzzFeed.
Oh wow.
Which you know they were also another place I really like to pitch because they were always open to hearing my weird ideas. Um, but yeah,
No, that's really interesting. And I also noticed beyond like shooting photos, you've done some writing over the course of your career, and you even you wrote for the Hundreds, which is I used to go on that website all the time like 10 years ago. It was they have like a really great blog. I'm sure they still do. But like his writing, is that something you've always kind of had a passion for, and is it still something you do much of these days?
I don't really do much of it these days anymore, but I don't know why. Like I somehow got tapped for writing when I was starting out. I was like, sure, I'll take it. And I did a bit of copywriting when like I was starting out, just freelance on a freelance base, when the photo work was slow and it was all over the map. Like I would do some food writing. I did a lot of that for like Thrillist
Hmm.
and Who else? Like some local
Yeah, because
publications.
I went back and looked at the hundreds, and you wrote a ton of stuff about like video games. Like you did a whole
Oh my
art
gosh.
you did a whole
Yes,
article you did a whole article about Zelda Breath of the Wild, which
yes.
I've actually been playing lately.
Ah,
I bought a Nintendo Switch over the course of COVID, and
you found one.
yeah. It's good. But yeah. How do you kind of link up with the hundreds? Because I've always had a lot of respect for like what Bobby Hundreds and those guys do over there. It's really like creative stuff usually.
They it was so random. I had never heard of them before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had never heard of them before, and they reached out, and it was mostly on like a kind of writing basis and not so much photo, although I did end up doing a little photo for them for
Hmm.
their editorial arm. But yeah, I if at all I can like pursue the things I'm genuinely interested, like video games and baking. I will ride that pony all the way to the end. Yeah, that was really fun. That was like right before Breath of the Wild came out, I think, and I was super jazzed. I was one of the dorks like waiting in line at Best Buy to get a Switch and
Oh,
got
it's
home
so
at like
addictive.
midnight.
I literally haven't played video games since I was like a kid, and then I was like, screw it, I'm gonna buy one of these Switches because my brother had one, and it's like so much fun. It's like the greatest thing.
Yeah, I have had Nintendo games my entire life, and I don't really play much of anything else. Like I don't really play Xbox
Yeah.
or PlayStation. My partner does, but I've always had a soft spot for Nintendo, and in particular the Zelda games.
Yeah. No, they're so good. Um, I guess like looking at most of your work, like being that it's like portraiture based, like how do you kind of approach like portrait assignments? Like you've done some really cool stuff. Like one night I was really jealous you got to photograph Charles Bradley, amazing musician. But I guess like when you get an assignment like that, like how do you kind of prepare? Like how do you kind of go into shoots? You kind of have like an idea of how you want to exactly execute it, or what's kind of your approach, I guess.
Yeah, with that stuff, like with Charles Bradley, I believe that shot was at Bumbershoot many, many years ago. And like it was back when the way I was shooting was so haphazard. It was, you would, email with the PR people before the festival, and then you'd set up your like 5 minute slot. And he was amazing. I mean, Charles Bradley in particular, the minute like I picked up my camera, he just had every single pose. Like it was like a photographer's dream. And I remember at the end of that, he like gave me a hug and a kiss on the cheek, and I just kind of died a little bit. But yeah, with that was like all natural light, and done in like 5 minutes in like the courtyard of the Seattle Center. These days there's a little bit more pre-production
Hmm.
with shoots. I can't just barrel into things, and I mean sometimes I do, but
Yeah.
um I tend to keep things light. I love when I'm able to bring an assistant, but in COVID times, you really got to keep your footprint small. And while most publications will like typically give me an allotment for an
Mm.
assistant, a lot of the time I won't. So I have really I upgraded in the last year or two to Pro Photo, and it's
Okay.
a B10 I have. It's so teeny tiny. It's amazing. Like I can hold it in one hand, like
Yeah.
literally the strobe, and have the camera in the other hand, and
Yeah, it's
boom,
pretty
like
sick.
it looks
I have the
amazing.
I have the older version of like the B10, the one that used to have the battery pack. Because when the B10 came out, they dropped the price on B&H Photo. You could buy the old one with the pack, and it's like the same head. It's so yeah, those strobes are so great.
Yeah, I have a B1 and a B10, and yeah, I just like you can't beat it. I used to feel so intimidated by these lights, like not just the price, but like, oh man, how does this work? But
Yeah.
you figure it out, and it's like it's really just a game changer.
Yeah, I think that's like half the fun of photography. Like sometimes, like in the last year or so, I'll just like rent like some random piece of gear that I haven't used before and just like mess around with it. Like obviously you have your go-to stuff that it's gonna work every time on a shoot. But I think like I don't know, that's what I've been trying to do lately. Just kind of challenge myself and just kind of have fun with it sometimes. And it's like it's all an experiment, like every time, like pretty much. You never know what's gonna happen.
That's where it's at. You got to experiment. If the publications are paying for the gear, like just do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I wouldn't normally be able to rent this pack, but I'm gonna buy this.
Yeah, we have a great rental house.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a great rental house here in Seattle, Glazers, and the team there is so wonderful, and they're just like always open to answering questions and through COVID, they did like curbside pickup and all that. So I've been patronizing them like my entire career, and I just can't say enough good things.
That's good. And with like COVID and being you shooting portraits, like have you had to adjust the way you kind of shoot? Like, are you kind of shooting differently than you normally would before COVID, or what's kind of been your approach? Like, because I know a lot of publications they want everything kind of shot outdoors if possible.
Yeah.
I've been working with
Hmm.
lately, which is fine, but sometimes I mean it's outdoors. Like, it could rain. It's like you're dealing with weather, and then it's different type of things. But like, I guess how's your kind of overall approach been with portraiture with COVID and everything?
Yeah, I was on the phone with an editor this morning, and she was just stressing safety, safety, safety.
Yep.
Um, yeah, outdoors mostly. I'm trying to think of like what I've shot in the last few weeks. It was really, really hectic. I've been inside, but always masks, and typically
Yep.
try to keep the shoots on the shorter end. Like, whereas I might have spent like multiple hours before if I had that kind of time with the subject. Now it's more like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, just
Yeah.
to minimize any possibility of transmission, and um but yeah, like, usually just roll solo, not really with an assistant.
Mhm.
um Outside, clean gear,
Yeah.
PPE,
Yeah, all
the
that.
whole list of things.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Like I'm now it's I mean, I'm on the East Coast, so winter's kind of coming and same with you
Hmm.
guys. Winter's coming up in northwest there. It's like I'm interested to see what's gonna happen. Are we still gonna be shooting all these portraits when it's snowing and stuff outside? So
Yeah,
I gotta
everybody's gonna have like really red cheeks and like look horrible.
I'm about to start like photographing people in parking garages or something. It's gonna be interesting.
Hey, I mean, yeah, for sure. Like, you just got to get creative with it. And it's been a unique challenge navigating the constraints. I
Hmm.
think that, a lot of it's been good, kind of. It's kind of shaking people and like forcing them to think differently than they used to.
Yep.
Like one thing I've appreciated is that because people aren't in the office 9 to 5, like
Yeah.
with time slots, like I'm able to kind of push things like earlier in the day or later in the day to get like nicer light.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed that. Like, in the summertime I was trying to do all portrait shoots around like 7, and
Okay.
for most people that was no problem.
There you go.
So
Golden hour. You can't go wrong with golden hour. It's always this good
I
stuff.
know, like pro photo, whatever, got the sun.
That's awesome. And another portrait shoot I saw on your site, you photographed, I think, Joe Jonas for GQ. I was curious, like, what was kind of your approach to that shoot? And had you like kind of previously worked with GQ before that?
I think that may have been my very first shoot with GQ. I was working with Alex Reside.
Hmm.
He actually interned at Rolling Stone just before me, and I think we first kind of connected over Flickr, way back in the day. But yeah, he tapped me because he knew I was at South by Southwest.
Hmm.
To that point, I'd gone pretty much every year, just shooting for various publications. But yeah, he reached out with this last minute assignment, and I found out who it was. I'm not like a super fan or anything, but it was really just a trip to kind of spend time with them and, see how they interacted with their fans. And yeah, I spent like the whole day with them, just kind of tailing them around Austin.
Oh wow.
And yeah, like from their record like their hotel kind of press conferencey stuff. And yeah, Joe Jonas was amazing to be around. He was like really, really nice, not what you would expect from like, someone
Pop
that
star.
famous. Totally, like
Yep.
super nice, looks you in the eye, like holds doors open. Amazing to work with, amazing band too. Like they are very, very solid live band.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. It was a nice portrait. And I guess like what kind of assignments kind of pique your interest most these days? What kind of stuff do you like shooting and stuff you kind of hope to work on, I guess?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, my dogs.
It's all right.
I love editorial photography in the sense that it always keeps me in my toes. There's no predicting like what's going to happen next, and I kind of thrive on just like adapting and figuring out like how to shoot an athlete, how to shoot, a CEO, how to SVP or whatever.
Yep.
But I have been loving just like I love to photograph people who clearly have passion for what they do. Like, a really amazing chef or like someone who's an activist and very vocal about what they do and it's just like their life. Like I definitely pick that up on camera. It's like palpable and I just like love that energy and yeah, just real stories, people that really care about what they're doing. That's where I want to be with my camera.
Yeah. And like, as you know, working a freelance career, there's like a lot of ups and downs. Like sometimes you're busy, sometimes you're not. Like, have you kind of ever doubted yourself in this career path? And like, how do you kind of deal with those like down times? What kind of keeps you going and keeps you sane and kind of keeping the train on the tracks, I guess?
Yeah, it keeps the train on the tracks, absolutely. All the time. And I think it's important again to like talk to other photographers and just have a community because feeling like,
Mhm.
oh, they haven't called in a minute. Like, am I blacklisted? Like, did something weird happen? Like, that's never the case. Like, people just get so in their heads about things. And, for me, baking, it's kind of crazy. It's like the one thing that has taught me patience.
Yeah.
Um, Making bread like all the time that's involved all like the kind of like time that you're not doing anything but it's happening, you just have to kind of trust the process. um but this is what I do. I live and breathe it. I just love to read photo books. I love to look at other photographers' work. I love to take long walks with my dogs and just like look around. I
Yeah.
started running, which has been amazing. Never thought I would be a runner, but I just like love the way I feel like it opens me up to the world around me. Like I never used to really like notice certain things, and now like even though like we're very limited in like where we can go, we can't really travel, which I
Yeah.
really love to do before. Run the same route every single day and just kind of noticing colors changing, like things like that. It's been kind of just like it's been humbling, it's been comforting, it's been a weird comfort.
Yeah. I think it's like this, I try to like those weeks where you don't might not have an assignment or something. Like, yeah, like keep yourself busy and like I was trying to remind myself, like, give myself time to like, have fun sometimes. Cause like running your own business sometimes, especially now, like when a lot of people are working from home, it's like hard to turn off that off switch sometimes. It's just like marketing, website. So it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's kind of cool to hear you kind of got your running, got your baking, and kind of giving yourself some time to like actually just enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I mean, life isn't gonna last forever, go on a hike, like look at a tree, smell things, like it's amazing. There's so much more than emails.
Yeah, for real.
Emails are boring. Nobody wants to do that.
No, exactly. No, it's great. Oh, and I had to ask you on your website, you said there was a time you got stuck on the island. What was that story about?
Oh, it was so horrible. It was San Juan Island. And so a friend and I kind of went on a leisurely little visit up to the island, and we were waiting on the ferry at the end of the day. It was like winter. And we were looking at the ferry schedule, and I think we had been looking at like 10 a.m. and not 10 p.m. And we were thinking like the ferry is gonna come take us back to Anacortes, and we can go back to Seattle at 10 p.m. But it was 10 a.m. and we totally missed the ferry. We were
Oh
like
my
sitting in a
God.
bar drinking a beer. Yeah, and we didn't have a car because we like went to the island to rent bikes, and then we started kind of like realizing like, oh shit, like we're on this island. Like it was like off season, it was really cold, it was kind of dark. um and we just started noticing like all these weird posters for like criminal activity on the
Oh my God.
island. so so we started calling like hotels and like everything was booked up, and so we ended up sleeping in the police station.
Holy shit. Well, at least I guess you guys did find the safe spot to sleep, I guess.
Yeah, at that point
Yeah, well, that's
it was a time I was like I had my consequences and I was just like face down on a desk in the police station.
hey, that's half the fun of traveling. You never know what's gonna happen, but now you got a good story. It was a rough night's sleep, but you made it out.
Yeah, oh my goodness, never again, never again.
Yeah. Well, I guess to wrap up, like, I mean, you've been at this for a while. Like, what's kind of got you inspired right now, and like anything you're kind of hoping to work on moving forward, and everything in the future, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I have to stay optimistic about things, there's a lot happening in the next 7 days, and
Yeah.
it's a time. Yeah, gradually I've been in the process of the commercial.
Yep.
So that's one thing. I mean, that kind of stuff is slowly trickling back in. I shot an ad campaign over the summer, my first big one,
Oh,
and
wow.
that was heartening. It was like a very crazy experience. It's like, learning as you go. It's basically like falling down the staircase to learn about gravity.
It's like it's a lot of moving parts and managing a lot more people on those shoots.
Yeah, and there's a lot to know when it comes to that world, and I look forward to kind of learning more. On that particular shoot, it was with Kraft Heinz. I worked with Wonderful Machine, an amazing producer over there, Brian Sheffield.
Okay.
So he helped me through the way. It was a lot, but yeah, I'm kind of just baking more, taking photos of that. I actually got that assignment based on some photographs I'd taken of something I baked at home.
Wow.
Super crazy. Like I
What?
was in a creative call and they're like, "These madeleines, like, what are these?" And I was like, "I baked them." And they're like, "Okay, you can shoot this for us."
Wow. So they just kind of found you via Instagram pretty much.
I always am sure to ask folks how they find me, and they said it was internal, so
Mm.
that was very vague. Didn't really tell me much,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that like after talking to the creative team more, they're really into the fact that like I actually like to bake. Like there was a
Mm.
food stylist on that job because I couldn't have done it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that it's just important to pursue like your personal interests, and hopefully everything else just kind of falls into place. So I'm gonna keep baking and taking pictures of cookies.
I like. I'm here for it. I'm following you on Instagram now. I'm looking forward to seeing what baked goods you got coming out. The holidays are around the corner, so maybe you got some like interesting stuff planned. I'm real excited for it.
You know.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this, and for people listening, if they want to check out more of your work, where's the best place for them to go?
It's my website at chonakasinger.com, or my Instagram account. It's at Chona Kasinger.
Perfect. I'll link it, and people can go check it out. And yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. So there you have it. That was the Chona Kasinger interview. I just want to thank Chona so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. It's a real pleasure talking to her about her work and everything she's kind of been working on over the course of her career and everything recently. So I can't thank her enough. Definitely go check out Chona's website at chonakasinger.com, as well as her Instagram at Chona Kasinger. I'll put the links in the descriptions, but definitely go give her a follow. She has lots of cool work up there and is always updating on projects and whatnot. And as always, I'll be having weekly podcasts every week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, as well as the Photo Banter YouTube page. So definitely go check us out on YouTube, and feel free to subscribe. It'd be much appreciated. And as always, thanks for listening, and take care.